Okay, I think it's time to get started. I'm going to mostly be in listen-only mode, but I guess because I'm note-taking, but I'm also going to be emceeing this, it looks like. Um, so I was thinking the prompt for today, Venkat hadn't offered one, so I just came up with one. Was in what areas of your life does the AI in the loop approach that Webb's describing here seem useful? And then as sort of a second part of that and more general, rather than just even your own life, is what places do you, in what ways do you think Webb is overly optimistic about this approach, and what ways do you think Webb is underly optimistic? So I was thinking we could start at the bottom and pass up today. Stephen, if you would like to get us going.
So yeah, personally, I thought the blog post was a bit optimistic. I don't know. I just imagine reality to be a bit more clunky, and you would have to go back and forth a bit more. But it seemed like the blog posts seemed to make it seem like everything just magically kind of worked with barely any code. But yeah, I did look at the Nat Friedman code that he linked to, and yeah, it was pretty simple. It seems like pretty much like automated prompt engineering in a sense, or but yeah, I mean, for me with AI, I'm really interested in understanding its implications to writing code, just because that's what I do. But yeah, my main thoughts. I guess I'll pass to the next person, Anak.
Uh,
Hey, I thought it was going up, but anyway, I can go. Uh, yeah, I thought the article was really good. I mean, I was very intrigued to see um, the sort of the AI in a loop concept, and I'd heard about LangChain. I'd sort of looked at their documentation before, but I hadn't quite seen how it works. I felt like this article does a good job of explaining how LangChain works, and uh, specifically the sort of with the React framework, which is sort of like reasoning and acting within the language models, and how that can be used for some specific tasks. I thought the thought act observation framework was very interesting, and I could see a lot of different potential applications for it. The other one that I found interesting was the sort of uh, uh, sort of the uh, sort of the framework of the language. I think it was Robin Sloan that wrote it. It shared like a comment from Robin Sloan's article about how language models could be used as universal couplers, sort of like, and between language models, TCP/IP could be carrying these outputs versus just carrying, raw dumb set of information. I thought that was a very interesting, forward-looking, sort of speculative idea, and uh, yeah, I mean, the sort of I found the examples that was used in the article was quite trivial in that, like, one was about NBA statistics, another one, I think Nat Friedman's code, was about booking a hotel. But I understand behind the scenes there is a lot going on. So in terms of the prompt, uh, not directly in my personal life, but in sort of my past professional life, where coincidentally I was dealing with a lot of simulation and simulation tools. So one of the areas of the simulation tools that is often a point of friction for people is converting what's traditionally considered like a physical domain in terms of like 3D shapes, 3D CAD geometries, into computational domain that has more sort of interesting features to it in terms of the physics, the boundary conditions, the constraints, so that it can be solved. And the sort of process of converting the physical domain to computational domain is it's sort of like dark arts in the simulation world. There are no rules of thumb. There are rules of thumb, but it's often a art more than a science. That's how the sort of the community sees it, the simulation community. And I thought this sort of AI in a loop is sort of like a perfect an application for such a problem where I could see it potentially helping engineers building a simulation model on the go, especially at the point of converting the physical domain to computational domain on, uh, especially if the language, if the model has historical contexts uh, of various best practices and best approaches, so it can really ease the transition and sort of make for more productive engineers. And in terms of where I thought, so that might be the point leading into the other prompt of where the article was over optimistic and under optimistic. I thought the examples used was, like I said, I found it trivial in terms of the tasks itself. From there, the article went to singularity, and I thought that was overly over optimistic. And where I felt was under optimistic in sort of the use cases I mean, the use case that I just described about a more sort of industrial application of AI in a loop, and felt that there was not enough. I felt like there was not enough thinking or substance to that, uh, but overall, it gave a really good understanding for me on how the React framework works and AI in a loop framework works. So uh, that's me. I'll pass it on to Anuraj.
Uh, yeah, so I have read the article quickly, and the ending of the article with the singularity was a bit annoying, but otherwise, the think, act, observation, thought loop seems to be like the read, evaluate, print loop in like programming. So it seems something similar to that. So I've been using ChatGPT for interactive programming, like kind of using it as an interactive Stack Overflow. So I ask some questions and then it replies. So I didn't understand how different is it from that loop itself. And yes, and yeah, so it gives an example of like using a robot with a language model. So that was an interesting application, but I don't know like how much it can progress from there itself. So it's just using a language model to control a robot. Uh, yeah, so those are some random thoughts. Next is commits.
Hey, I'm just gonna listen today. For now, anyways. I'll pass on to Grigori.
The first question of the prompt was where this can be used. In my view, almost anywhere. It seems like a technique that disciplined humans use anyway. Uh, if you think about it, we kind of doing almost the same with our brains as the technique suggests doing using intelligence. Uh, for me, the most interesting part is, of course, thought act observation loop, and within this loop, the most interesting part, the most questionable, is of course observation. Um, Examples that I saw in the article, the simplistic, but generally speaking, uh, in real life, we don't base our thinking on a single observation. We have to either do a carefully staged experiment, like when we are doing a physical experiment or something like that. That's how it has to be carefully staged. Or we have to base our thinking on lifelong accumulation of intuition and knowledge. Uh, we are not staging an experiment, but we have a lot in our brains to decide whether what we actually observe is bullshit or not. Uh, I believe that artificial intelligence does not have this ability yet to stage experiments, but it can learn apparently, or to accumulate lifelong volume of intuition. So this is an interesting aspect of it, in my view. How do you teach a machine to accumulate intuition? About observations, you see something, you read an article in Wikipedia, and you can converge around this article with your tools in a sort of act observation loop. But if you are not sure that this article, the whole article, is not bullshit, kind of pointless to tighten the loop. So you have to decide whether it's true or not, whether it's good enough, whether the source of the data is good enough or not, whether your observation produces some kind of image of reality, or this is a completely different image. I was also a little bit annoyed by the singularity example, but I have a very specific counter example, I would say. And it is, of course, chess. In chess, machines beat the humans like 10 years ago. But if you check right now, the best machine can beat the best human, the champion of the world. But not like with a huge margin. The margin is still pretty low. It's not like the best chess machines are 100 times better than the best, or 1,000 times better than the human. It's like just a little bit. Just you can be sure that the best program will beat a human, but still not that much. And the domain chess is pretty simple compared to physical reality or what we have to handle in our real life. So if we take this as an example, we can expect in most of our tasks machines to beat us, but again, just by a little bit, not that much. Not in thousands times, not in 10,000 times. They're not going to be better than people going through this loop thousands times better than humans. So it gives me a little bit of hope that it will help us and not destroy us. And I will pass it on to Jenna.
Yeah, I think where I come at this from is the never-ending difficulty of having an underling do anything for you ever, right? Like, so I have actively avoided ever being in charge of employees, and in my brief, I've had a long-running experiment going on with in a couple of different ways of virtual assistants. Good old Tim Ferriss started that, but it was around for a long time. So I've read lots of pieces over the years of how to scope something so that a virtual assistant can do that well for you. And I have one probably almost 10 years now. So this actual human from fancyhands.com runs a site update for me once a month. It's stupid and silly. It wouldn't take me long, but I don't want to do it. And it was worth the $5 or $10 a month that it's cost me all this time. So either dumb, a trivial example, or no, that's exactly what we're looking for. How to find jobs that you can give to things like this in a way that will work. So a couple of specific pieces relative to that is I am wondering how slowly the floor will drop sufficiently so normie like me could do this kind of a thing. I'll drop it into the chat. There was a guy that was letting GPT to inform his investing decisions. And he was doing exactly what Matt describes, where you grab the act step and go do the thing out in the world for it, and then give it back so that it can keep doing. So there's this interactive piece where you go, we're going to be the ones out doing the thing in the meat space and giving it back. Though that, of course, he talks about like that with that browser example of ordering, booking a reservation. And the last one, just that's on my mind, it's a novel. I think it was a young adult kids book that I read probably 10 or 15 years ago, but it stayed with me and I'll probably never ever find it again because it was kind of a dumb read. But the character was trying to solve some big difficult thing, and it had this kind of an agent that was kind of in a dog and kind of a little personality of a dog, but he could give it a hard problem to solve. The thing would go off and study, look at the problem, and then they would get back together and chat about it. It's a novel, you can do stuff like that. And the kid would tweak the guidance to the agent so that it could go work, tweak what it was looking at or how it might find an answer. And this went on and on, back and forth on some, whatever the plot line was. So I've had this picture of like, you could have this thing that did these great loops for you. But how do you get there? And will this, where does this tool sit for now? So I think those are my high level thoughts. Not very high, but that's where I've got. So Nathan, either you or Venkat-san, I see, whichever order you want to go in.
I think let's do Venkat next because I'm trying to take notes as well.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'm still thinking about this because it's kind of like a diary of like and exploring AI in a particular way. So it's kind of hard to react to without actually trying that approach of using AIs yourself. But from my limited interactions so far, it does seem like tightening the loop and like serving as the, I guess, reality feedback agent for the AI sounds like a good idea in principle, because even without going all the way to trying things in reality, I've found that with ChatGPT, just shorter prompts working in more interactive chat mode is not only more effective, it's more interesting. Like instead of telling it, give me 1,000-word explanation of a topic, if you ask it like a very focused question, then another question, then another question, and sort of iterate like that, you get generally better responses. So I think that's, I guess, not a very deep thought, but related to what Jenna said about having to manage or supervise people, yeah, that's been one of my things too. Like one of the reasons I went free agent is I do not like being a manager. I was a manager for several years, and though I think I was like medium good at it, it's not something that I truly enjoy. And a lot of people are describing, especially for coding, ChatGPT as a good and energetic intern, but makes mistakes, so needs lots of supervision and monitoring. It's exactly the kind of managerial work I don't like to do. What I like to do as a manager is work with a really experienced person who knows what they're doing, so you don't have to like monitor their every little detailed action or micromanage them, but you can think with them as a thought partner at like a very mind meld sort of way. So not at the level of they go off for a week and do something and come back to you and you react to it and give them positive or negative feedback. That's, I think, for like inexperienced junior people. With experienced people, you want to interact like much more informally and high intensity, in the sense of like maybe you're working in the same room every day, you're like chatting constantly on Slack or something like that, but it doesn't feel like micromanagement or supervision. It's more like you're in a mind meld, and that's only possible with a peer with whom you're like at finish each other's sentences levels of mind meld. And so far, outside of very shallow topics, I've not been able to get there with interacting with AI. But I think this OODA loop approach is trying to get to that, and I don't know how far it'll get. So yeah, that's me. whoever's left, Nathan.
Yeah, Kimitsu, did you want to jump in, or I guess I could offer a couple thoughts if you are still in listen only.
I'm still listening. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll throw out a couple of my thoughts with reading this. I think the thing that actually struck me as I was, less as I was reading this and more as I was listening to everyone here talk, is it everybody keeps thinking of this as like the I'm gonna wax Star Trek here. Everybody thinks like we're building data. And I'm pretty sure that what we're actually building is we're building the computer on the Enterprise. Because the computer on the Enterprise can answer a lot of these questions. You know, you say, hey, computer, do this for me. And the computer does it for me. But nobody would mistake it and think the computer is an intelligence. The computer is just a highly, this highly sophisticated tool with this sort of iterative thing. And some of the more fun Star Trek episodes can be the ones where the computer misinterprets the prompt that the crew member gives it. Some of the worst episodes can also be that way. So I think, like a lot of people, I was kind of annoyed with the whole singularity is nigh aspect towards the end of this. I did find that overly optimistic. I think I have a couple very concrete reasons I think that's overly optimistic. One is that I think it's sort of mistaking these models for code. Like we're talking about a big weighted training set that's not quite code, like in terms of the way we would think about it. So such a set might improve, suggest improvements to the code that is generating the next training set or interpreting that training set. But there's an interaction between the two, and it takes a while. Like there's questions of where do you get that data? How long does it take to analyze that data? Relatedly, on the analysis front, there's barriers there that are hardware barriers. These models are very impressive, but they are very energy intensive, and they take a lot of resources. Now, there's been some breakthroughs miniaturizing these things recently. Maybe not breakthroughs, but we're still a long way from that sort of world where that model is just going to iteratively improve itself. And it's not clear, like, it can't just write new code. Like, there's a lot more that goes into these things on both the hardware and the data front. It's taken humans a long time to get here, and even if an AI was a lot faster, it's not clear to me that the next iteration of that AI wouldn't be geometrically harder once again. So I think that's sort of my counter argument to a lot of the singularity stuff. But I am sort of excited with the idea of finally having perhaps the voice assistant that is I can say, hey computer, do this, and it actually is more useful. I don't really use voice assistants right now because I don't find them useful, and I think this could be very, very interesting and potentially offline. Like all of Wikipedia is less than 100 gigabytes to download, so like you could put this all on a big hard drive and potentially have like local assistance and whatnot. I think I do agree with the current state with what Venkat observed, that this is still probably more of a shorter thing. It needs to be iterative, and I think people are. I think that's maybe my main takeaway is like people are expecting data to write a poem, and what they actually have is they have the ship's computer, which can start up a holodeck program for you with vaguely specified parameters, but is not the same thing as intelligence. There's my nerdy Star Trek take. I guess at this point we'll just open the floor.
Yeah, I will add some thoughts to that singularity point. That there is a quote from Werner Winch from 1993, and it mentions embedded systems. So, like I would say that if AI has to make embedded systems, then we are not going to get any singularity for sure. That was a joke. But so because like this, I think that code is written was written in 1993, and not much has changed in the last 30 years. We have some better debugging systems, but yeah, so that itself shows that the article itself ends with a overly optimistic take.
I'll chime in with two things. One is there's a proposal on the server to have a new channel for sharing prompt recipes. And I think most people are too new to even know that's going on. So I dropped a link to it in the chat for today. And, you know, it could easily get overwhelming or it could be crickets because everybody's got lots of places to share prompt recipes. But if you like the idea of sharing some together here in the OIC server, there's a proposal on the table to do that. The other big thing that I want in some future version of this that a normie like me can use is a real simple and obvious toggle. Like the Tools for Thought people are really big on, I want to load up everything I know and have answers just come from within that set. And then there's another time when I want to maybe ignore everything I already know and go outside of that. So it feels like this assistant of the future who won't be a pain in the ass to manage, who is actually helpful in moving my brilliant thoughts into a more brilliant direction. That was said with irony. I hope that was obvious. I want them to be some really obvious and easy ways to toggle from where it looks at its answers. And I bet it'll come, but I don't think it's there yet. So that's my last 2.5 cents.
Vinay, would you like to chime in?
Hey, just still reading. Sorry.
Any more thoughts?
All right, I guess on the one hand, I'd love to get your thoughts tonight, but on the other hand, if everybody else is out of thoughts, I don't want a lot of dead air. Any other last minutes from anyone? Otherwise, I think we'll call it 15 minutes early.
Feels like it's a good day for questions more than answers with a piece like this.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a dog there that has a question.
So that was
Or
unlucky
demand.
timing, wasn't it? I hit mute at that moment. So much for that assistant.
All right. With that canine commentary on the future of AI assistance, I think we'll leave this go to next week. I think the structure we're doing works well. Is working well so far. Next week, I did volunteer take notes this week. I think if somebody else wants to volunteer take notes next week, that would be great. Just drop your thoughts in the distributed systems group or in the thread before the next reading. All right. Nobody's got anything else. Thank you all for being here. Great discussion, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.